things and incorporate them into their lives so that they can benefit from them. Another area where people can have difficulties is attention. So being able to concentrate and keep on aware of activities that they're doing and respond in conversations or in everyday interactions. For instance, if you go out shopping to the store, to the grocery store, and you need to keep track of what you're doing. And then we have language. And again, people sometimes think that this is an area where they don't realize that people with dementia can have language problems. But in fact, there are 3 different types of specifically language-based dementias, which can affect people's ability to express themselves, but also to understand what other people are saying. And again, you can imagine that having language difficulties significantly interferes with your everyday life, with your relationships, with your ability to function in the world. And then we have perceptual and motor difficulties. And these are ones to do with interacting with things, your ability to use objects, use items in the world, and your perception of what is going on around you. And then we have executive function. And this is one that's often not well known outside the realms of psychology and cognitive science. But executive function is what enables us to initiate an action. So we might decide we want to do a particular thing like make some food or go and see a friend. And then we have to initiate that action. And then we have to monitor or track our progress with that action until it is completed. And those steps all present great difficulties to people who are living with dementia, because keeping on track once you've started an activity can be quite challenging, and people can get off track or forget what they were doing. And we all know of stories of people who've started to run a bath or put on the stove, and then they go to fetch something and then they forget to complete the activity. And so for me, when I'm thinking about how we can support people to live with dementia, I've always got these sort of cognitive difficulties in mind, and thinking about how we can use technology to support them. And I'm sure that most people who are listening are familiar with the concept of assistive technologies, because these have been around for a long time. And so this is just a standardized graphic of some of the types of assistive technologies that we're familiar with. And you can see that things like mobility aids, hearing aids, this is what assistive technology has typically been, especially for older people or people with physical disabilities. And we see assistive technologies as those things which can support people. And I really like this definition from the US legislation, because I think it contains 3 elements that are important when we're thinking about how we can use technology to support individuals to live with dementia. So first of all, they talk about it's any item, piece of equipment or product system. So it can be anything that is supportive, whether it is acquired commercially off the shelf, and what I'll be talking about includes off-the-shelf devices, whether it's or something modified or customized, so something that's been adapted. But the key thing is that these devices, this equipment, whether we've gone to the store to buy it or it's something we've modified ourselves, these are used to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities. And I think this sort of definition is really helpful, because if we think about the challenges that people with dementia have from their cognitive disabilities, then understanding how to create the solutions and integrate them into their lives is really quite important. So when I'm thinking about what problems people are experiencing, as we were hearing in the first talk, I also work a lot with the people who are living with dementia to try to understand the things that are important to them. What is it they want to keep doing? What is important in their lives for it to be meaningful? And so we can see here, it's often about people being able to keep doing the things that are important to them. So here we can see cooking, for instance. This lady is ironing. This gentleman wanted to be able to use all of his television remote controls, because they had 3 at the time we were making this video. And some people want to keep playing games. So it can be any sorts of activities in daily life. It's not just the practical things like cooking and groceries and banking and laundry, but it can also be the things that are fun, the things that make life worth living. And that is another important thing to keep in mind when we're thinking about how to support people with dementia with technology. I can also think that sometimes these are things for them to be managing on their own, but they can be with family and friends. So keeping people connected, keeping them engaged with other people and other activities. So in my lab, it's a bit similar to what we were hearing earlier from my colleague in the Netherlands, but we also work very, very closely with people who are living with dementia and their families, and also with the services that support them. We want to hear all of those voices, but we do see them as 3 separate areas. So there's the individual, there is their family, and the supporters. So we do a lot of work exploring the potential of existing technology and how we can make them usable for people, because off the shelf, out of the box, not everything is the most accessible. We also develop new things, and it can be software or hardware. And we want to work a lot with developers and designers and engineers to create things that people with dementia can use, but also that they want to use, that is useful to them, that is part of something that is meaningful in their lives. So now if we look here at off-the-shelf products, I just want to talk a bit about the work that we've been doing. I'll show you a short video from a study where we were looking at how people learn to play new games. So that's a very popular game called Bubble Explode, and we did quite a lot of research with that, because it's one that's very, very accessible for people to learn, whether they've played games like that before, whether they've used a tablet before. And you probably noticed that how he was learning. He tried at the beginning to press bubbles that didn't pop, and then he seemed to develop a strategy that you have to have ones that are matching colors. And you hopefully also noticed that throughout that clip, and this actually was part of a longer session, he was very engaged, he was totally focused, he was paying attention, he was concentrating hard, and he was his head down, and he was just really looking at it. And from that initial study that we did, which we published back in 2015, we started developing a training program which we offered to local services. This is a group in a day program. And what's important with most of the services that we work with is that they want to do things in groups. In other words, things that they can offer to a lot of people at the same time. And here you can see a lady who is working on her own, and this gentleman's playing on his own, whereas some people are playing together with other people. And they really like this, being able to do this as a group. And you can see this lady's playing a card game. Maybe she's holding a stylus as well. And you can see that people can learn. And we found that training the staff and also the family members help them to support individuals to be able to make the most out of using tablets. Through this research, we also developed a resource for people to find apps that are accessible. So ACTO Dementia stands for Accessible Touchscreen. apps for people with dementia, and these are organized by different genres and also different features. So it picks out whether they're one-player games, multilingual, for example, art games, board games, and so on. And we have a brief description of the app and then some of the settings for making them accessible. And I just wanted to highlight that some of this work involved working with older people who were of Chinese origin, most of them in Canada, where this work was conducted. And these are some of the games that we've identified and tried out as being accessible for people. I said we also worked with a lot of off-the-shelf technology, and this is from a workshop where we were looking at people using this tabletop robot, which you can see better here. This lady is talking to this one, and well, this is where we look at things like how easily people with dementia understand how to interact with these new and emerging technologies, whether they can control them, well, for instance, in this case, receive calls, and if there is some potential benefit for these technologies as they're emerging. And so we do work, let's say, with robots as well as tablets. We've also done things where we've focused on creating new applications and so on for people with dementia. And I just want to talk a little bit about a project that we've been doing for a number of years called Circa. And you can see it here in use on both large screens and smaller ones, in groups and in one-to-ones. And Circa was originally developed as a conversation support to try and get around that working memory problem that people have, where they can't remember what the topic of conversation is. And we found many years ago, we've been working on this since the early 2000s, that having something on the screen that provides the focus of attention. And it's been very, very successful. We've published many papers using Circa, including one in 2018, which demonstrated from a quite large study that we could improve the cognitive scores and quality of life scores of people with dementia who actually even had quite substantial cognitive decline and were living in care homes, for example. So that's been very exciting. And we're currently making a Canadian version. This is to give you a taste. It has photographs, it has video clips, and it has music. And I did some work with collaborators in Sweden, and in 2020 they launched the Swedish version of Circa. And I'm happy to share with you that just this year I've worked with some Chinese students in my lab who created a prototype. They co-created it with older Chinese citizens and then tested it out with some other ones. And they found a very positive impact on the conversation between older people who had some subjective cognitive decline, not dementia, because it was a pilot study. But the conversations with family caregivers went very well using this and exploring the contents. So another thing we've done is working with another off-the-shelf technology. So I'll show you a little clip of this one. So this is using the Xbox Connect, and again, we've run a very successful group program in many different settings around Toronto in Canada, where we've introduced this and we've trained the staff to use it. But we've also been collecting research data. What I want to draw your attention to is, first of all, this is a social activity. It's a group. People have fun. They really enjoy this collaborative and slightly competitive element. It's also cognitively stimulating, and we've published a paper a couple of years ago which showed how people learn and the cognitive impact. But also you see this gentleman getting up. We've also been exploring the physical aspects and how this sort of technology can benefit people with physical difficulties. You'll notice here a number of walking aids, because again, when people have dementia, obviously a lot of them mainly older people, and so they do have other challenges. And so what we're excited by is the potential for these sorts of technologies to deliver rehabilitation for people living with dementia, And when we think about rehabilitation for this population, most of the research that's been published is cognitive. So people trying to teach memory strategies and so on. However, what is perhaps less well known is that people with dementia have a much increased fall risk over older adults who do not have cognitive impairment. So we're well aware that falls, having a fall at home or outside, is one of the leading reasons that older adults are admitted to hospital in many countries. However, people with dementia, that risk is 2 to 8 times higher of having a fall. And once people are in hospital, we know they often get deconditioned, they get more confused, they lose some of their cognitive abilities, and this interferes with their being discharged home. But surprisingly, there's been very limited number of programs to tackle the physical aspects of dementia. And so we're working on this at the moment, and this is one of my PhD students in the back who is working on this program particularly. So that's really quite exciting because it's one of the areas, and there are many areas where there's lots of scope for putting technology into the lives of people with dementia and the systems around them to improve their experience. We're also doing other work besides the Connect. We do other work on mixed reality technologies. Currently, we've been using the HoloLens, which is VR, and this is augmented reality. And this is very interesting. It's called Osmo. And what we're doing here is we're not obsessed with games. You might think we are, although games are great fun and really important. But we use these as tools to understand how people with dementia and the type of progressive cognitive impairment that they are experiencing, how they understand these different realities. So the relationship between the physical, the real world, and the virtual. And these are different ways of presenting it. These are just 3 examples. But what is interesting, for instance, about Osmo, which is this puzzle game, is that you have physical pieces that you move in the real world, but it has an impact in the virtual world. In the same way as the bowling I just showed you, you're in the real world making movements, but you're controlling something in the virtual world. And so we're using these in a number of ways. We're doing a number of studies. Some of it was put on hold during the pandemic when we couldn't work directly with people. But we're looking very much at this type of functionality, whether it has potential benefits to support people to keep doing activities in the world, not just for leisure and entertainment. Now, in the last few years, there's been a lot of, as I say, increased awareness. And I think I mentioned the pandemic, but I think in some ways it has thrown a spotlight onto our older people and their access to digital resources. And particularly, it's starting to grow in dementia. This is just one graphic, it's not mine, that I pulled up from the Dash Plus and the JAIN technologists. And it highlights 5 different areas where dementia tech can play a part. And I think this one here, the detection, and we were just hearing earlier when Professor Feng's talk about how we can use AI and other tools to detect and push that back to earlier and earlier detection of cognitive impairment. And then also some ways that it is being used from a healthcare perspective, cognitive care and coordinating care. And also, of course, the happy moments. I love that. So that to me is the things that make life worth living. I also wanted to direct you to some resources that we have produced. So, for instance, on the theme of how technology fits into care, we produced a book in 2019. And this is, I would draw people's attention to, if you're interested in this space. It's one chapter written by people living with dementia about how they use technology. We have chapters written by people from healthcare, from long-term care. We have a chapter from our colleagues in the Netherlands talking about using technology outside of the home. We have another chapter about technology at home. There's also this special issue of dementia and geriatric cognitive disorders. At that time, I was the chair of the Alzheimer's Association Technology Professional Interest Area, and they asked us to do a special issue about technology and dementia. And in this, I was trying to get across how there is so much scope for bringing technology into the lives of people with dementia. We are really struggling to find ways to deal with these cognitive impairments that have such a pervasive and all-encompassing impact on people's lives. And I feel there is just so much wide open space to put things in. And we can be leveraging technologies we already have as well as creating new ones. But I think to start with, we need to use the ones that we already have. And then also in the same year, for people who are interested in more detail, there's a chapter in this book which was all about working with people with dementia to create technologies and some of the experiences and lessons learned from my own research. So in conclusion then, to me, when we think about dementia, instead of saying, oh, this person has a problem with X, they're having difficulty, I don't know, doing their laundry or, making their meals. Yes, that's the behavioral aspect. But what we need to think about is the cognitive, like what is underlying that? Why are they having that difficulty? Is it attention? Is it memory? Is it executive function? So that we can really target our technological interventions. But the other side of that is we have to know how much cognitive demand, how much cognitive burden learning to use a new technology will take, because there's a real balancing act between the demands of learning the new tech and the benefits it will bring. So it's not a straightforward equation, and we have to really be mindful of that. And I really think that having, there's a lot of existing tech, you see here, games and phones and so on, that can already support people, but they have to be coordinated, they have to be integrated. We can't just throw a bunch of boxes of stuff at people and assume that's going to benefit them. We have to think through really carefully how these can be integrated, and as I said, not just how the person themselves can learn to use them, but how the functionality will deliver positive aspects to keep them doing the things that are important to them. So I just want to thank my team and my collaborators. I don't do this work alone, and I'm very fortunate to work with a fantastic group of people across the world. And if you want to contact me, these are my details, and you can also go to our Acto Dementia website if you're interested in looking at the games, including, as I said, the Chinese ones. So thank you very much. I will stop talking now.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Arlene. Yes, Arlene Estelle. For this also very interesting talk, and we have a question from Wijnand. What are, in your experience, the most relevant dimensions of diversity, cultural or otherwise, in working with people with dementia and developing technology for or with them?
Well, the cultural diversity is very interesting. I've been very fortunate in Canada to have, especially because I'm in Toronto, to have students from a wide range of cultural and language backgrounds. So when we work with different communities, because we're very mindful that, I think the point you were making earlier about sort of migration, to have students who can interact with older people in their own languages, first of all, and are more familiar with their sort of cultural expectations. It was very interesting when, with my 3 students who were co-creating the prototype circus, the Chinese circus this year, because they ran the co-creation sessions, and we had to do it remotely. And when I met them afterwards to see how it went, the first thing they said was, it was very noisy. And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, they just wouldn't stop talking. They were so excited to talk about things that they remembered and to compare their experiences. And it was very interesting because the people that they engaged were from different parts of China. They'd grown up in either rural or urban areas that had very different experiences. And the point of Circa, which I was using as an example, is that it's not a memory aid and it's not a test. It's a conversation spark. So these images and the sounds and the things that people see are really supposed to just provide a catalyst for conversation. And what was very interesting was whilst some of the themes were different because they reflected very different cultural experiences, the actual process of using it and it working as a conversation aid were actually the same. So I think being mindful that everybody will have had different experiences and what they bring to the collaboration is really crucial. But there's also identifying the things that will work across people's different cultural backgrounds. And I think that, when we do co-production, I mean, we have a set of guidance that we have for these workshops and house rules that we always share at the beginning. But it's really hearing everybody's voice, giving everybody a space, and respecting their different contributions. And I think when you bring people together who have shared backgrounds, that can also be beneficial.
How would you take care of it? Like, what's your advice on that? So you have like multiple kinds of cultures, and you have like, for instance, dementia throughout the whole world, 55 million, basically really quickly. Yeah. How would you cope with that, with those multiple kinds again of cultures?
Well, I think some of the approaches we have developed over the last 20 years for bringing people together and hearing their voices. But when we've tried this in different languages, with different cultural backgrounds, and I've done a tiny bit of work in Africa with some African Alzheimer's associations, and the same approaches can be used, but they're tailored to the culture. So you need to have a facilitator who is from that culture and speaks the language of people, but actually, the principles are very similar in the same way that if it was some other condition. I think where we struggle is because it's different to other medical conditions, because it's to do with the brain, to do with how we think and how we behave, that people find it very challenging. And that's where we do need to actually share these standardized protocols so that the benefits can be gained across the world. So there are things that work in English-speaking countries, for instance, where the cultures would be different, but the principles of working with people who have dementia are the same.
Exactly. So on a scientific level, we can work together with multiple countries, different cultures.
Absolutely.
Also, right now we're bringing people together. You are informing like a great part of the world right now. I heard we have over 700k viewers, by the way. So yeah, your research is really appreciated. And also, I'd like to mention to everybody that if you have a question for our scientists, so for Professor Dr. Arlene Astel, please ask them on our platform, in our live stream. Arlene, I would like to thank you as well. Maybe a last reflection on the goals of dementia and maybe the expectations in the near future. Could you reflect on that?
I think my expectations are that we raise the importance of life after diagnosis. So there's been a huge amount of efforts, and this is no criticism of my colleagues who do AI. I also have done work on AI with AI. But diagnosis isn't the end goal. That confirms that people have a challenge, and it helps us to target interventions. We have to support people with life after, and this is where technology has so much to offer, just so much. And I don't mean fancy things that cost thousands and thousands of pounds or euros or dollars, but things that we already have, things that are in people's homes right now, things that they have access to. We need to be systematic and get it out there into people's hands, because there's so much benefit that they can gain, and we are failing to do that, and we need to catch ourselves up.
Right, yeah, they're not really like easy with technology, so to say, but they can benefit from it. So
absolutely,
population that can benefit, but they need to be trained.
Yes, but also increasingly when we do our workshops, we ask people to bring their own devices, and show, like talk about, and I know from having been in China, things like WeChat, for instance,
Yes.
it's an application that's multifunctional. So, people are using that. So if they start developing dementia, they're already, people now, a lot of people have a smart device, they're already using applications. And really, it's about leveraging that and extending their abilities and what they can do, rather than assuming that everybody is without experience. Of course, there are lots and lots of people who've never used a computer, and so we have the training, but we also need to train the people who work with them, because often they don't know how to show a person with dementia to use a smart device.
I have one last question from my colleague Funky One. She says, thanks, Professor Arlene Estelle, for the great presentation. I have one question about developing technology for people with dementia, as they may have different extents of cognitive disorders, different backgrounds, and different preferences, which makes them become a very diverse group. What do you think is the most important design principle that designers and engineers pay attention to when designing technology for them?
Well, I guess I would turn it around and say I don't think there is one universal thing that we would give to everybody. If we look at something like Alzheimer's disease, which is arguably the most common type, then what we have found is something that supports people to keep doing their daily activities is really important. But working with the individuals is really crucial, because I've seen lots of engineers and designers who've made a thing that they think is needed, and people don't want it. What they really want is something that helps them in their daily life. And the example earlier of the compass that was created in the Netherlands to help people navigate when they go out, so they can remain independent and still do that. That's a great example. And similarly, we have found, as I said, with Circa, people told us that because of the memory problems, people couldn't hold conversations, and that was upsetting for families and for care staff because they couldn't talk to someone. And we realized people could perfectly well have conversations, they just can't remember what they've talked about 5 minutes ago. So you provide something which enables you to keep having a conversation, but you don't need to remember what you spoke about 5 minutes ago. And so it's about, and that's what I'm saying, it's about the cognition of understanding why this difficulty is occurring. And that's what you target, a solution that people can use. But it's understanding that there's a cognitive deficit, and the technology is a prosthetic to address that.
Prosthetic.
Build a bridge.
Second brain, right? Like an extension of your brain.
Yeah, well, in a sense, yes, because if you think about it, and I mean, the first paper we wrote was called a cognitive prosthesis, because we recognized the cognitive bits that join everything up, that's what's damaged. So if we use the tech to provide the gap to keep everything going along, then we actually are not just supporting the person, we're leveraging their existing skills. And we're using tech in a really smart way, rather than a sort of, not a dumb way, but in a sort of a heavy-handed way. Because like I said, we don't want to give people 20 devices. They'll never remember all that. But we want to give them things that are very accessible and easily adopted into their life. So I think thinking about it as a cognitive prosthetic is a really handy shorthand for that.
Right, and we should not become too dependent on it. But for instance, with traffic lights, it's also like artificial intelligence, and it's taking care of life and death. Like you stop before the red light, and we are doing that for like decades already. So we are quite dependent already.
Yes, well, we are, but I think that's the other thing to think about is if we think about how we all use technology now. 20 years ago, how many people, we didn't have many, not everybody had smartphones, people didn't have access to the internet, for instance. But now we do. So when we're thinking about dementia, it's those things of like, why are they having a difficulty? Because whenever people have problems, it's actually their behavior that's spotted. Oh, they're not doing this, or they behaved in this way, or they said this thing. But it's because of their cognitive challenges. And I think we keep that at the forefront, and we think about how we can address those cognitive deficits, the challenge, the bits that are not working anymore or not working as well. That's where we we insert the technology just to keep those bits going. And I think we can support people much longer. You know, some of those videos I showed, these are people who've never really interacted with tech, a lot of them, and they are, you know, learning to play those games like the bowling or on the tablets or whatever, and it's transformed their experience. And also the perceptions of the carers and so on, who think, oh, they can't do anything. Because when they see them doing that, and we do not specially select people, we go to programs that are just running down the road and everybody can join in, anybody. We don't select, you know, and say, oh, only people that set cognitive ability. We have everybody. So we have people who score 0 on cognitive tests, people with mobility aids, people in wheelchairs, and we incorporate everybody into it. So that's how we know the technology is accessible.
And being incorporated, maybe like Neuralink from Elon Musk, the chip in the brain. So that's something next level, right?
I've actually said this more than once. I think in the future, if we think about, I mean, it was a great presentation by Professor Feng about the digital twin, but actually, if you really think about it, if you actually think about what's happening in the brain, you think about the loss of connectivity and also the loss of neurons, but there are big pools or big islands of experience and knowledge and skills that are retained. How do we join those up? It could be something external, it could be something internal in the future.
You are saying that it could be possible to have this chip in the brain and then be enhanced and to perform better and memorize better. I mean, we're using smartphones right now, you know, but then even be transferred faster from satellite to satellite to our brain, actually. Signals.
Well, I think if we think about in the future, I mean, I'm not sure we know enough about the brain to be able to do that quite yet, although there is some interesting things about, you know, with nanotechnology and that's been developed in, you know, for treating brain cancers and so on, for crossing the blood-brain barrier. I think if we think about it, and I know for some people it's a very sort of scary, sort of sci-fi cyborg type future, but actually, if you think about what is happening,
right,
and we think about how the brain, you know, works as a very interconnected system, a very sophisticated system, but bits of it, I would see it as like light bulbs, bits of it are going off. So then we think, well, how do we respond to that? And we know that, I mean, I know there are new medications, you know, coming through, but realistically, in terms of targeting the neuronal loss, for instance, if we take Alzheimer's, you know, neurons have died, they've gone, there are now gaps in between. So how do we target the consequence of that? You know, do we then have something that understands how our brain works, how our cognition emerges from those neural processes, and we try to then supplement or compensate for that? I think that's how we need to think about it, because it really is a cognitive disorder, although, you know, that arises from the damage to the brain. But I'd be interested to hear some of the people's thoughts.
Promising possibilities I hear already. And I'd really like to hear more from you, Arlene Estelle, Professor Dr. Arlene Estelle. Thank you very much for this interesting talk as well. And go on to our tea break now.
接下来我们继续茶歇。6分钟之后，我们就继续往下，是关于未来的议题。茶歇之后见，谢谢。
And we go on to Yong Lu, AI for AD.
好的，接下来我们有请刘勇。那么他演讲的主题是关于怎么样去赋能发现生物标志物，来帮助阿尔兹海默症。那接下来呢，我们有请刘勇教授。那他是来自北京邮政大学人工智能学院。那现在呢，刘勇博士是来自北京的邮政大学的人工智能，是一名教授。除此之外呢，他也是关于自动化的博士学位拥有者。那么，除此之外呢，他也是学者，从2012年开始呢，也是去过剑桥担任学者。现在呢，他已经是有超过100篇的同行评审期刊文章的作者，包括生理、心理学、高级科学、脑科和科学。那他主要的兴趣方向是智能大脑影像以及关于认知障碍的应用。最近呢，他的重点是放在去学习可复制的神经科学的影像生物标志物，用于阿尔兹海默症的研究。那我们有请刘勇教授。
Thomas, thank you for your introduction. Yeah, I will. Okay. Can you see my? Oh, what's wrong? Okay. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Oh,
We can hear you.
yeah. I'm here.
Can you see this thing? Yes, we're waiting for your screen.
Yeah, I don't know. So now could you see my presentation? The first page?
Please share your screen again.
Okay, wait a moment. I don't know why. Okay, wait a moment.
So what I also wanted to say is that from
Okay.
January 2021, Professor Yong Lu worked
从
at
2021年6月开始，那刘勇教授呢，也是担任了教授的职务。好，现在有请刘勇教授正式开始。我现在已经换到全屏了。
Honor to be here. Here I want to show some, recent result about how to use artificial intelligence to discover some imaging biomarkers for Alzheimer's disease, especially based on outside MRI. As we all know, the Alzheimer's disease is a progressive neurodegenerative disease carried by the decline cognition and the decline memory functions. And we all know that the brain of the Alzheimer's disease is widespread. Okay, like we saw the fire here, and then to the whole brain, and the Alzheimer's disease in the brain of the Alzheimer's disease, they are associated with disrupted progress of vital to the neurons and their networks, including the communications between the neurons and also the information transfer from one region to another region is impaired in the Alzheimer's disease. And the bad thing is that till now, even we have tried our best, we still do not get good medicine for block or for even cure this kind of disease. And what's wrong here? And we all know since 20 years ago, people started to want to find some imaging biomarkers or other biomarkers for Alzheimer's disease. The NIA in 2008, they have test framework for diagnosis of the Alzheimer's disease. They said we should include the employed beta decompressing, and pathological toll or neurodegeneration. And we all know that in many countries now, I think in many countries, the CSF biomarkers is not too easy to get. And also for the PET image, not all the hospitals has the PET scanners. However, for the non-invasive MRI scanners, for example, in China, now we have more than 10,000 scanners in the hospitals in China. If we can, find some markers based on this kind of image, it will be great, for earlier diagnosis of the Alzheimer's disease. So for my group, I spent a long time, to study this kind of markers for the Alzheimer's disease. As we all know, for the imaging from the MR scanners, we can get some, special structure MRI or diffusion MRI or functional MRI. A lot of black and white images. If we want to use this kind of images to understand the Alzheimer's disease or searching the biomarkers for earlier diagnosis of the disease, we need to work hard to develop some new method. With this kind of method, we can get more detailed information for the minor changes in the brain from the structure MRI, diffusion MRI, or functional MRI. We can use this method to help us find some new evidence to have understanding the Alzheimer's disease and also identify some new biomarkers for early diagnosis. In fact, we can get a lot of information based on different modality of the MR, such as we can get the size or atrophy or perimeter volumes based on structure image. And we also can get some special methods based on the white matter fibers based on the diffuse MRI. Also, we can get the brain activity, brain network using the functional MRI and also the PET image. So, how to convert this kind of methods to the features or to the markers for early diagnosis for the individual prediction is really, really hard. And as we all know, in the past, I think in the past 20 years, also for my group, we have studied a lot of, result. We have get a lot of results about the group comparison, such as we can get the data from for a group of normal people and for a group of Alzheimer's disease. Then we can compare the difference between these two groups and got a lot of evidence. And also for this kind of evidence, we also can, got some correlation between the imaging method and the cognitive methods. However, if we want to, extend all these methods to another hospital or even to another MR scanner, it is really difficult because sometimes too many noises or too many, variants in the for the scanners and even for the, for the patient. So in the past few years, my group focused on how to combine the images from different scanners together for the individual prediction or for the early diagnosis based on an individual level. And we all know that for the imaging biomarker, there are at least three basic features. The first one is a objective. That means we can measure the features quantitatively. And also we need this biomarker is reproducible, and that means the sterilizable. And we also, as a patient or the doctor, we need to explain why our brain changes are associated with the decline of cognition. So that means we need the biomarker to be interpretable. So in the past 20 years, I think we have, in the world, there different groups. And if we read these papers, we can find that most of these papers are one-side cross-validation. How to say? That means for most of these papers, we can get the data from one group of Alzheimer's disease, one group of normal people, and we can compare. We can get the difference between these two groups, and we can get some explanation about this difference. However, if we want to get a biomarker, as I said, we need to get this result robust. Get this result can be generalized to another hospital, to another scanners. That means we need the imaging biomarkers can be used with a new guy, a new patient come to the hospital. We get the data and we can apply the imaging markers and the models to this new data and get the right result. Unfortunately, we still do not get a lot of result about the individual prediction, or the result can be validated by large-scale samples. In fact, for my group, we have spent a lot of time on developing the individual features, such as from the local brain regions, also to the full brain regions. And as we all know that our brain do not work based on one solo region. We need different regions work together to finish or to fulfill some special tasks. So we can also evaluate the brain changes in Alzheimer's disease based on the brain network models. So in the following, I just take the latest result from my group as an example to show how we can convert the imaging to biomarkers for Alzheimer's disease. As we all know, if we want to get the imaging markers, firstly we need to get good samples, good data. For the following work from my group, we based on the data from 6 different hospitals around China, and also we included the data from the island. Totally, we have around 2,000 subsets for our research. The first, the hippocampus is the target of the region of the Alzheimer's disease, and the first example is about how we can use the structured imaging to get the radiomics features for diagnosis, longitudinal progress, and biological basis for Alzheimer's disease. And we all know that for the hippocampus, undergoes macro changes before very severe atrophy, and some minor changes cannot be measured based on traditional MR scanners. However, we have the hypothesis that if we have good cells or good neurons, then we can get normal size or normal shape MR structures. If the region with the dead neurons or dead cells, maybe the size or the shape of the hippocampus will change. So we introduced a new method, that means the radiomics features, to measure this kind of small changes in the hippocampus. And previous studies have shown that the radiomics analysis promises the increased precision for diagnosis and assessment of the prognosis, and also for the individual prediction of the therapeutic response. So we introduced the radiomics analysis for Alzheimer's disease. The first thing is we want to know if this kind of features, are robust or for different scanners. So for this, we include about more than 700 subjects from 6 features, the first thing we want to know if there exists any common features can be replicated, identified among these different hospitals. So the first step, we use the mega-analysis to identify the robust feature that can be replicated among these hospitals. Then we use machine learning method, a very, very common machine learning method, means SVM method. We can leave one site as testing and leave the other 5 sites as a training set to identify if we can use the read-only features to classify the normal people from the ultimate disease. And also we have performed more than 1,000 times for the another kind of a tenfold validation. And with this way, we can get the most useful features for classifying the normal people from the patient. After that, we can go to the consistent features. That means these features are commonly different among these groups, and also important features for classifying the patient from normal people. And then we can measure if these features correlated with the cognitive ability. After that, we use the identity more than 1,200 subjects to as a validation data set to verify if the above steps can be replicated in another independent data set. After that, we can for each subject we can got probability for Alzheimer's disease. Then we can measure if this scores correlated with the gene risk, with the A beta, with the tau, or also with if the subject convert or not. Predict if we can use this kind of features to predict if the high risk people converted to Alzheimer's disease or not. And also for the people with high risk, we can got some longitudinal date and see if the longitudinal change associated with the imaging features. We are lucky, and we found that the result can be replicated between the in-house tiny data set and the identity. And also, if we take the data from China to train a model, and then we can test if the model work or not in identity. And also we can use the identity as a training set and test it in China data set. And we can get a very high accuracy for classify the patient from the normal people. And with this model for classifying the normal people from the Alzheimer's disease, we also can include the subject with high risk. That means the mild cognitive impairment subject. We can evaluate if this kind of features can be associated with the longitudinal change. You can see that the blue line, that means the subject, the high risk subject, do not convert to Alzheimer's disease within 5 years, and the red line indicates that the subject who converted to the Alzheimer's disease very quickly. Here is about the cognitive changes, and here is about several important features that are identified by our models. You can see that a lot of several these features are very similar. The changes of these features is similar to the cognitive changes. That means we get independent and reproducible hippocampal real features for Alzheimer's disease, and we can use these kind of features to perform the earlier diagnosis. Also can evaluate the longitudinal changes of this subject. And as we all know, that's the basic hippocampus. Maybe we will lose some information. So in the following, we want to know if we can find some markers from other regions, and also identify if these markers are important or interpretable for the Alzheimer's disease. from the whole brain. And we all know for the traditional machine learning method, we can get the data in and then get the risk to go out. That means the data in, let's go out. Between this, is a black spot. The black box. How to open this box to get the interpretable result is very important. So we introduced a very simple method, and we named it 3D teasing method. We can use this method to open this black box and identify the most important reasons. And for these features, we want to know if it is, can be replicated among different kind of data. Also for the data from China, for the data from Adenine, we got the cross-validation, the independent cross-validation. Then also for the A beta, for the gene risk, for the longitudinal change, we can see if this kind of scores associated with this method. You can see that as the last result, we can see that if we use the adenine trainer model and testing on the data from China, we can get accuracy about 18.7%. And inverse, we can also get a similar result. That means the feature can be repeatable. And also you can see that for the individual subject with high risk, we can predict if this subject convert to Alzheimer's disease or not within 3 years with accuracy about 71%. That means with this method, we can go to the result can be used to classify the patient to evaluate the longitudinal change. Also, for each subject, we can go to the risk score for the Alzheimer's disease. You can see that for the risk score of each subject, it is significantly related with the cognitive ability. Also significantly related with the A beta in the brain, also the tau in the brain. Also, more importantly, you can see that for the subject who converted to the Alzheimer's disease within 3 years, or who converted to the Alzheimer's disease, we can see that the longer of the duration, the lower risk. That means the higher risk of the risk score, maybe the short time to convert to Alzheimer's disease. And we all know, and I said, we all know that the outbrain is not work just based on one or two reasons. They work like a network. If we want to perform any very very simple task, we need different brain regions work together to fulfill this task. So I think maybe the network model is good to evaluate the changes in the brain of the Alzheimer's disease. However, in the past year, there are a lot of studies study the Alzheimer's disease with the functional MRI. They have a lot of different kind of features such as the brain activity, the regional activity, the function connectivity. However, almost all the results based on one single site. So we want to know if there exists any robust replicated result from the functional MRI. So we use a similar framework. We identify the reasons of the connectivity that is changed in a large sample size, and we also can use these kind of features to predict if the subject convert or not. And we also can use leave one out validation method to go to the model to classify the patient from normal people with functional MI. And use this kind of leave one side out first validation. We also can get the models for classify the patient from normal people. And also we can train a model to predict the cognition performance for the individual subject, especially for the subject who never treated in the models, such as for the mild cognition patients. We also can get the risk score, and we can find that the risk score for the mild cognitive impairment subject is significantly related with the cognitive abilities. That means we can get the models using the functional MRE. And we also know that the ultimate disease is really, really complex. And with this, changes of the functional network, we found a very good way. That means we use a non-negative matrix factorization classification method. We can cluster the subject into 4 different groups. Each group with a very, independent network models. Then even for the mild cognitive impairment subject, we also can cluster this patient into different subgroups.
Okay.
Okay. For this kind of subject, each group have the network is specific, and all these results can be replicated between China and the America. That means use our own data and replicated use added data. Also, different subtypes have different cognitive features, and also different subtypes have different, longitudinal changes in cognitive ability. That means some group may be impaired in language, and some group may be impaired in the visual attention, in memory, and also in other abilities. That means we can identify a specific groups who impaired the specific network, and we associate with different cognitive ability. In a short summary, the above solar brain imaging may be a good feature to classify the patient, the ultimately from non people. And also we can use these features to evaluate the progress of the ultimate disease. And we also saw that for each subject, if we can get a risk score for the subject, and this kind of risk score are associated with the cognition abilities. That means we can find potential imaging biomarker for the ultimate disease. And importantly, for almost these kind of features, we can get the biological basis for these features. However, as we all know that for this kind of imaging, we still need a lot of work to do to perform more robust, more replicable imaging biomarkers for the ultimate disease and also for other diseases. And we all know that the most replicative is still a question for the biomarkers searching. Some important journals and the government pay more attention to this kind of research. And remember that all the user data are very clear. That means the included subject do not associate with other disease such as the diabetes or other kind of disease. However, in the hospital, you cannot imagine that old people come to the hospital are just ultimately just cognitive ability, decline cognitive ability. Sometimes they also associate with some other disease. How to use this complex stage is still a problem, and we need more robust method to classify the patient into different subgroups and then processing the biomarkers for this kind of groups. We still have a lot of work to do. And and for my group, we have open all the toolkit. And if you have the data, you have a good idea and want to use the data that provide the code, we can share our result. And also I need to say thanks to all my colleagues and also the findings. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Mr. Yong Lu. So we have no time left because all your information was really, really informative, really technical as well. So I think it's very important to have some questions like after the speech. I believe a lot of people are interested, and I've heard as well. For now, we have to move on to our next
现在我
expert.
们进入到下一位演讲嘉宾。
For me, it's okay to have 5 minutes. My talk is a little bit shorter, if that
Yeah.
helps.
No, that's okay. So let's start with with you, with the next speaker.
我们开始下一位演讲嘉宾，非常感谢
Who for this very inspiring.
刚刚给我们带来非常精彩的介绍和演讲，也谢谢大家。
So we go on to Katharina Burtel.
我们到下一位演讲嘉宾，
Dementia, and she is an assistant professor and colleague of Mark Neres. So please, the floor is
有请
yours.
Katharina Ortel 交给您了。
Under computing. Thank you.
非常感谢，有请。
Yeah, okay, now I can share. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay, thank you so much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here. If any of the participants please comfortable to switch on your cameras, that would be highly appreciated because it's always nicer to talk to faces and to talk to into the voice. And please do feel free to ask questions whenever you should have one. Okay, so today I would like to talk, and I'm representing my group at TU Delft in the Netherlands, about social robots and music for care and vet care. Like as a computer scientist working artificial intelligence, we're developing agents or social robots a lot. But what we don't want to do in our group is to have those robots or agents be on an island, like isolated from any kind of stakeholder input, from input of the patients, from input of the doctors and nurses. What we would like to do is create artificial intelligence together with all of those people involved. So that's like one of the core beliefs that we do share. And how do we want to do this? Well, we believe in the idea of human AI and co-learning in a dynamic environment. Of course, right? So it makes a huge difference for anyone who's worked with robots. If you're in a noisy environment, like speech recognition will go down. If there's a lot of people around you, all of this will affect the performance of the system. But of course, also the human itself, right? Sometimes you're in a bad mood. Sometimes you just feel shy to talk. All of this. So, and also like as dementia progresses, like needs are very different. So we have to have some kind of self-regulation mechanism inbuilt in the systems on all three parts, which actually carry out self-regulation so that we can go towards a co-evolution on all sides. And how are we envisioning this co-evolution? So we're talking about mutualistic symbiosis. So a symbiosis is a long-term relationship between two or more organisms that live closely together. In our case, then, the AI and the human. And this relationship is a product of, long years. So it should not only be you meet like once and everything stays static, but you actually develop something like a relationship. And the core idea is that both organisms benefit. One of the strong ideas also is the establishment of the hybrid intelligence clusters in the Netherlands is that 1 + 1, so AI and human together should be more than just 2. So like really creating a symbiosis. But how do we achieve this? So one really important aspect of this, especially if if you followed like the news on AI on a regular basis, is that, well, we need to teach AI something about human values, right? Value alignment with responsible relationship building. It's actually quite hard to teach an AI these values, right? And even for a human, your values might change depending on context, or your the way you order them, you rank them, might quite be dependent on the context you're in.
Right.
So one of the core challenges we are facing today is how to teach AI these values. And in order to do this, one really important aspect is to understand the difference between artificial intelligence and human intelligence. So artificial intelligence, there are maybe two big strands currently in existence, and the first one is more the symbolic reasoning, so which is knowledge-driven, semantics, it's logic, and then the machine learning, which is data-driven, and as the previous speaker has been focusing a lot on. The human intelligence, on the other hand, is can be distinguished between recent and old, and recent is slow, sequential, deliberate, abstract reasoning. Actually, some similarities to symbolic reasoning. And it can also be a rapid, parallel, automated, and dissociative. But if we look at the differences between AI and human intelligence, is that for any kind of AI, we can always copy it, right? Indefinitely. It's algorithmic, so nothing really changes necessarily if it's not inbuilt. And whether there's some metacognition is a question. For human intelligence, however, it's not only the neural connection which determine the processing, but it's also about the complex structure and location of connection. And here, really importantly, time does affect the processing. Like this thinking about thinking, this metacognition is something which is quite important for humans. So there's those two differences. And maybe one of the most important one is emotion, right? As we all know, like with dementia, as the disease progresses, patients become much more attuned to emotions, right? If you're getting angry, they will mirror that. So for that reason, it's really, but artificial intelligence currently doesn't really have it. Of course, there's a lot of work on emotion recognition, trying to understand what humans feel, but feeling it themselves, machines cannot do yet. So how can we think about this if we're trying to build AI to support humans, to co-evolve with humans? So this is one of the really big, important aspects we have to look out for. And of course, morality as well, which is quite aligned with the value part already. So what we are trying to do is creating these relationships. Like to create carers which, basically are there 24/7, right? Not to substitute any nurses, just to make that really clear. That's not the aim, but to support and to have this in a 24/7 blended informal care environment, to build some kind of new human and human agent relationships, and also to use the sensors inbuilt in the robots to monitor, support, and co-learn, which is really important for our approach. One aspect which we're putting a lot of emphasis in the group is music. To use music as a tool in conjunction with robots for elderly care. So music evokes emotion. It does trigger memory. It stimulates exercise. And one of the important aspects as well is it does connect people. So one of the aspects we also looked into is that when we evaluated this approach with people with dementia, is that reminiscing, so using the music as a stimulus, and then reminiscing about it, actually is one of the activities which was best appreciated in a personal music assistant. So we did run a study, which we had at the living rooms in elderly care centers. We had 30 participants and 8 activity coordinators. So these were the carer which would be working with the patients on a daily basis. And we had 3 weekly 90-minute sessions. And the result was that the robot with music-related group activities stimulates the patient socially, cognitively, affectively, and physically, which was really quite encouraging to see. And especially, as already mentioned before, this reminiscent activity was appreciated. So, to give an example of the reminiscent activity was, does this music remind you of anything? So the robot would ask, and then, actually, right? So this triggers the memories. So this is also very important to have some background, of course, on the patients. We can kind of hack it and think, okay, so this patient got born in, 1926. So at this time, this kind of music in this area was hip, or whatever word you would use. But of course, it's much more powerful still if you know something about the biography of the patient, if you know their favorite music, if some relatives can give some insights. In terms of movement, just also to explain this, we had a now, so an now robot there. I would do some dance movements. What was really nice to see is also the interaction between the patients together. So kind of ignoring the robot, right? But like connecting together. So it was great. And then we also had a bingo activity. So we also have the robot administering patient-reported outcomes measures, short for PROM. So that's like value-based healthcare. It also measures cost, quality, and outcome measures for enhanced life expectancy and quality of elderly life. This like in a data-driven healthcare support, whereas the problem with PROM is that the PROM response rates are low, and PROM administration puts a high workload on healthcare professionals. So here is also where we then thought, we could use a robot to actually carry out this interview with people suffering from dementia in order to support nurses a bit further. And we could show that the PROM interview by the robot shows actually similar performance as the interview by a nurse, and of course frees the nurse then to do more person-centered activities, take more time with the patients themselves. Then in terms of explicitating values, so the individual value judgments have an emotionally grounding concern, different dimensions, and are relative to role and work context. So value stories can actually help to explicate for requirements engineering. And then there is, of course, the challenge of balancing values and responsibility. So we have to specify and relate values or norms for the dynamic work processes and situations at stake. So adjustable value-sensitive work agreements provide opportunities for flexible value commitments. That's one of our ways to go towards the value alignment mentioned at the beginning of the talk. And this again relates to the continuous learning. So the feedback mechanism should be built in the AI to refine the models that feed the support of moral decision making. and also by providing actionable explanations to its decision. An agent that actually enables humans to understand and appropriately trust, act, and learn. And that's it. If you have any, I know we now do have quite some time for questions, and I will talk quite quickly, so please feel free to ask any questions you might have.
Already have questions, and thank you very much already. So about this challenge of AI and the adoption of it, could you maybe elaborate on that? So how difficult is that, and what is the challenge exactly?
Sure. Should I maybe stop sharing my screen? Are you sharing? Okay. Yes. So I think there is quite a lot of challenges in AI in general. So one aspect is how to actually get the data. So for the data-driven models, right? So how do you actually get the data, and how do you store it in a responsible manner? In Europe, we have GDPR, right? So like everybody has also the right to be forgotten. And how do you do that responsibly? How, especially with people who maybe cannot give consent anymore themselves. That's one of the big challenges. Also, how do you, right? So from a computer science perspective, you would like to maybe put sensors everywhere, right? Sensors like video, audio, haptic sensors, anything you could potentially think of, can give you a lot of information about the patients, but they can also be very intrusive, they can be intimidating, all of that. And they might also capture information which they might have not, you might have not wanted to capture. For example, if you have a microphone open, right, to do speech recognition with the agent, you might not only capture what your patient is saying, but also what maybe the person next to your patient is saying. And that might be quite confidential, that might be quite private information. So like filtering this out is of course essential, but also technically not that trivial, right? So how do you do that in a
between people and like how innovative or adaptive they are?
It's
So,
could be.
Yeah. How do you cope with that?
How do you cope with that? I think the honest answer is at the moment we have a very strict ethical and data management requirements. So any kind of experiment or we're still in an experimental stage, right? Any kind of experiment we are running goes to a lot of scrutiny in terms of really making sure that only necessary data is collected, and we have to justify any kind of sensors we're using and why, for how long, and that is really encrypted data storage. So that is one aspect to it. Of course, that means it's not that easily scalable, right? So at the moment, we're still relying on a lot of hand checking, manual checking, etc., and a lot of trust building, also with the elderly care centers.
Would you have a robot yourself?
Sorry, would I use a robot myself? You're asking? When I'm old?
Yeah. It's up to you. I'm ready, like at this age that I am, can like supportive.
Yeah, so I think I would really like a robot if it gives me some agency back. Say I can't walk that well anymore, and the robot can help me actually go to the kitchen, right? I think I would really appreciate it, especially if I then don't have to call my son and say, hey, can you help me, right? Like this. In German we call it Würde, like dignity. Like dignity to if it gives you dignity. I would not appreciate a robot if it feels that it's controlling. or that it gives me a routine I might not appreciate.
How can you prevent that AI is taking over, like simply said?
How can you take over? So that then probably, so I think so. In two ways, right? So safeguards and value alignment in the data-driven models. That's one thing. And the other thing is also like, how do we design AI? Do we just use it as a black box and okay, just everything goes in there, or yeah, well, do we have these safeguards in there?
In the end, you can plug it out, and like we already discussed in this conference, like traffic lights are also controlling us, and like we're depending like on them, the controlling life and death actually. So yeah, and I see a raising hand from Arlene Astel. I think she has a question. So please, Arlene.
Yes, I do, Catherine. Thank you so much. It's really interesting and resonates with a lot of my research. I was just wondering about your thoughts on at what stage we should be trying to introduce these types of innovations for people who are living with dementia. I mean, you were talking about working in sort of care settings, but what are your thoughts about how and when we introduce these things for people so they can get the most benefit?
Yeah, so that is a really, really good question. And I don't know, well, right, so that's just my personal opinion from very limited data. You probably know more, but what I understand so far is the earlier the better. And because but then of course not every patient directly knows that they actually are suffering from dementia. And then also, how do you robots are expensive, so can you not everybody can afford a robot, right? Or we can't bring. So you can think of then not having a robot but an agent, but not everybody has a smartphone, right? I think that will change as
there will be a difference, between people and their robot. Like some robots will be super advanced and others will only can clean the floor.
Yeah, but also the cost, right? So I think a Furhat robot I know is around 12,000 euros. Like of course, like a private person, right, can't afford it and it needs maintenance. So that's also why, of course, working with elderly care center is more scalable. But yeah, I think agents and on smartphones might be a way, but again, so yeah.
So you're saying that in a way what you're doing with the robots is perhaps more of a bridge. In other words, it's helping to find out what people could need, but maybe to be scalable you would want something that is much more widely accessible. And you mentioned as well about the different stages. So do you think, how do you approach taking account of the fact that people's needs change over time because of the progressive nature of dementia?
Yeah, so I think the honest answer is currently we do not, because we are still at an experimental stage. So we recently got some funding and we're putting some more sources into this line of research. But we have ideas about how to implement this, like for example, building a conversational memory, which kind of tracks, but the abilities, the cognitive abilities of a patient, how he reacted emotionally, effectively to certain stimuli, and adapt the algorithms accordingly. So it's really adapted to the person and it tracks it, and it's there for long-term support. So that's one of the ideas we're currently testing. But whether that is really then helping in practice, I think is grounds for future research, but that's the avenue we are walking down currently.
Great. Thank you so much. Very interesting. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you very much as well, Arlene, for your question, and Katharina Urtel for your talk and answering the questions. It's really interesting what you're doing at TU Delft. And you're talking also about the co-evolution of robots and humans, and like earlier as discussed as well, like the better humans get, the better the computers get and the robots, right? And then the better the humans get, and the better and then it goes on and on. The symbiosis. Could you elaborate on that for like the last question?
The last question. Sure. For example, let's think about it like this. So, for example, if you use reinforcement learning techniques, right? So that's basically like behaviorism. Well, not like, but it has some similarities with behaviorism. So if I learn like that a dementia patient is not reacting well to certain music stimulus, right? I can adapt my behavior, so that's inbuilt in the system. That way, the patient is giving the AI some data, but the AI is also getting a better model. Then again, if the AI gets a better model, it can present more targeted treatment. Like it can find the stimuli which actually helps the human. So then hopefully the human is getting better or at least not worse, right? So yeah.
So okay. Still some questions, but we go on to the tea break.
但是我们现在开始茶歇了。在茶歇之后，我们会有国际的专家与我们共同讨论。
And see you back in 15 minutes. Thank you.
15分钟之后跟大家相见。
hear me okay, Thomas?
Yes, clear and loudly. Can I have the slide of the experts as well?
那么现在调一下专家的幻灯片，
Jill.
包括郭教授 Hank Herman Nico 和 Joe Mulder， 非常感谢。
Yes. We go on with the roundtable discussion.
继续进行圆桌讨论。
Experts that are involved today. So we have the CEO of Genius Care, Jill Mulder. He will talk today about Genius Care, about technology, and he is involved as well as a producer in this discussion. And then we have Mr. Zhengyu Gao. He is working at the School of Design in Shanghai, Jiao Tong University. He is also the director of Interaction Design Institution and the executive director of Information and Interaction Design Committee in China and Industrial Design Association. His research concerns computer-aided design and human-computer interaction, as well as the experience design. And then we have Henk Herman from freelance, expert in e-health and a very good partner from JAIN, helping us expanding the philosophy of using tech in the world for people with dementia. And of course, Nico Schietekate, our Dutch embassy counselor and advisor, working in China and making this possible as well. So let's start with the roundtable discussion. Thank you for being here, gentlemen. So we have a few points here that we will discuss today. And we will do question rounds, and please let it be open discussion. Also to the technical team, at some moments it is nice to have like a gallery view so we can see all the gentlemen and the discussion.
那希望在讨论的时候，我们可以放到闭盘模式、画廊模式，这样的话，我们可以看到所有讨论人的实时图像。
Long-term cooperation be? We have a mission, right, to connect people all over the world. So the mission about joint long-term cooperation, and I would like to give the word to Nico Schietekate at first. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Great to be here with you together. Nice to be also with these experts in this roundtable. Good question to start off, and I think it's good to be ambitious as well. So my view on this long-term cooperation mission, what would that be? I think it could be curing dementia through international cooperation. And for this, we would really need to embrace technology for the benefit of those who have the dementia, but also for their environment, for their families, for the caregivers. And for this, we really need joint coordination, I believe, throughout the entire value chain, as the number of people with dementia in the coming decades is expected to triple. So we need this joint coordination across the entire value chain, I would say.
Yes, that's first good, very good and thorough answer. And I'd like to ask Henk Herman from Freelance to reflect on this as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me. This is a great event. And yeah, I've also thought about this answer now. And we have, of course, the same challenges. I mean, we have an aging society. In 20 years, the number of people with dementia will double to 150 million by 2050. And of course, there are also shortages in personnel. So this is a global, let's say, shared challenge and responsibility, but I also see it as an opportunity to work together. So our mission should be to support these people, their loved ones and their carers to the greatest extent possible. And doing this then also with support of AI, neural technology, HTAG, maybe also warm technologies. And we should develop technologies that support life, so living from the day you are born. And this includes care when needed. So I hope we can remain a certain standard quality of life, of course, but yeah, we should also be realistic. And maybe we should acknowledge that we might need to accept some changes in the quality of care that we can provide with the amount of people that care for our aging population. But of course, AI can help and let us design together also with China, to support our loved ones, the people with dementia, and of course our future selves.
Yes, that's also a very good point. And what are the obstacles that you think?
The obstacles that we're facing right now. Well, I think there might be some obstacles that we need to deal with, and one is, for example, related in how do we generally co-design with the intended user groups. So how do we do that very well, and that we include people with dementia from start, so from pre-design phases to generative phases, evaluative phases, and post-design phases. I also see some challenges still with the way we, let's say, measure the value of digital care, of care technologies. Maybe we can also work on a shared methodology for that. And of course, data exchange. So we really need to work on big data sets and exchange that really to enhance, let's say, also the AI element.
That's also already like going to gain global engagement, right? So I'd like to ask Mr. Gu also to reflect on this, like a global engagement, like global project and the exchange of information, like Nico and Hank Herman are saying. So please, Gu, can you reflect on this as well?
Okay, thanks for inviting me to this event. I think my background is design, so it's frankly I cannot provide too much insight for especially for medical or for AI perspective. We have some practice in changing people's living standard or living condition of dementia people. So in design department we have in Shanghai Jiaotong University we have a design school of design, and we have a number of different aspects of design. For instance, architecture design, landscape design, and the product and the service design. So we have some practice in making some we call cognitive disorder friendly community. So we have a landscape architect. They design, they participate in people in dementia's caring a nursing home, and they make some we call that hearing garden for disorder people, dementia people, and the cognitive disorder, especially in early stage, could be treated, or could be healed somehow in their early stage of dementia. So we have a practice of hearing guard, and also we build a community. It's kind of demonstration of an elderly community, in our city, and the community, we innovate the community by rebuild and or recall some site, in historical site, to help people to recall the early life. So that's kind of practice in our design of architecture and landscape. And another practice is our product design. We made some simple device to help people, it's a kind of so I my student in our department in our laboratory they jointly developed an device used to train people's it's kind of we call it olfactory training device. The device is based on an observation that dementia people has an early symptom of their olfactory sense may degrade.
Exactly.
Degrade at the early stage. So the neurologists they try to treat them use some essential plant essential or it's kind of scent to train people's olfactory ability. So that can somehow delay people's development of cognitive disorder process. So that's our practice. I think I just introduced those practices is just to find some maybe some joint or collaborative research in this area.
Exactly. And talking about devices, from Genus Care, Jill Mulder.
Yeah. Also, thank you very much for allowing us to be here. It's a great event, and I think what JAIN is doing to really build a global community that helps and works on AI and dementia, I think it's fantastic. When it comes to, and this is very interesting, when we've been listening to the lectures this morning and the information, we're talking a lot about, the data, and then we use that data to make a predictive model and so on. But it's not easy to get that data, right? And what we talked about, Katrina, this morning with the robots, this is one of the challenges that's available when you say, how do we get that and how do we make it non-intrusive? And this is where we play a role. As Genus Care, we made a device specifically designed for elderly people that is including a range of sensors, but also makes the connection with the elderly people through body sharing video call. And it can measure from a distance day rhythms and environmental sites. So I think what's important and what is the long-term cooperation, there's not one product or one solution that is going to make this or solve this or make a solution. I think it has to be a collaboration, and we all can play a part in that collaboration. And as Genus, we believe we can play a part at the elderly in their early stage, right? So early mild cognitive disorder or early mild stages of dementia. Add that a solution in the home where we communicate and we can measure, and then bring that along during the process, even through mild and late stage of dementia, because they've learned that how that works. So this is why it's so fantastic that we are part of this, because we may be a small radar in the big clock that we all need to work on in order to get to that solution. And I think what is essential, sometimes forget, how do we get that solution to the end user that they really like to use it, right? Because emotional stages, we've talked about this morning, how do we get people to engage? And I think, this is where we like to play a role in that.
Right. Clear. And then let's make quite a big step to Nico, because you're talking about end users, Jill. And then Nico concerns also about helping people with dementia, of course, like in China, and there are a lot of people, unfortunately, with dementia, and we should focus on the industry and reaching those people. So my question to Nico then is like, how do you think of that?
Of exactly what? Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so how can we reach the end users and take them in this process?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think that's exactly also partly what we do here. I am now calling from or participating from Beijing. So I have a team here in Beijing, but we have also colleagues within 10 cities spread throughout the country here. And we're covering a wide range of regions in China, working also on this specific topic. And exactly what we are doing. We are connecting authorities, but also researchers and entrepreneurs in order to stimulate public-private partnerships, also in the field of dementia, with a perspective of a longer term. And I think you're exactly making a very good point. So generally, in the field of innovation, people talk about the triple helix, right? That's a cooperation between researchers, entrepreneurs, and authorities, public authorities. In the field of health, we rather prefer the quadruple helix, which means to involve patients and patient organizations, the society at large as well. So this is what we are doing, and we very strongly believe in this model. And we see an increase in interest, both from Chinese partners and partners from the Netherlands, but also other countries to join this.
Yes, and also like expert Henk Herman from Land also has a lot of international experience. Could you elaborate on this point as well, please, Henk?
Yeah, I think what is important, if you look at today, we are working with more than 100 international organizations together in innovation projects. And what we learn is that we really need to work on, let's say, a shared vision, a shared methodology, also for design. And maybe an interesting example is also that we also work, I'm now in Korea, and we also work with people from Korea, for example. And if you look at the way we do co-design and iterative design, it's really nice to see how fast that is also being catching up here. And so the methodologies that we're using, we need to try to match them to ensure that, well, the designs we have also match, of course, the needs and the wishes of the different end user groups. So that is something that we learn. So it's really about building a shared vision, a shared methodology on how to tackle, let's say, new designs, also for people with dementia.
Yes. And how do we do that? Also, Mr. Gu, talking as a representative from China, also a bit like Nico, of course. So how can we work more effectively together?
Yeah, I think you know in China we still somehow locked down, so it's not so easy for us to go abroad to visit other countries. So far, it's I think maybe in future, I'm not so far away. I think maybe next year things will be better than so far, and I think we can visit to each place and to find some project. Maybe we can do some pilot test for your companies, your startups. If you have some good idea or good product, I would be happy to help you to test them in China, in our community, in our practice.
And Jill saying about like a product of Genius Care, the home system.
Yeah.
Maybe Mr. Gu and Jill, there's some ground for collaboration.
Definitely. Actually, we manufacture the product in China, so that is already a easy step. Actually, talked about co-design. We work very closely with the local communities here, and we're doing a large-scale test with elderly people to make sure that what we do actually works. But co-design also means working with factories, right? So we've developed the product without actually visiting the factory online. So it can be done remotely, like we do today. I think we've learned through COVID that there's actually a lot more possible from a distance than we always thought. I will be definitely very interested to talk with Mr. Gould to see how can we, what we've learned in Holland, how can we apply that in China. Translation from the user experience to the Chinese population. However, I believe, and the research that we've done is that the basics are all similar, right? So mild cognitive impairment means very simple user interface, focus on what it does, and we talk a lot with product people, and they say, well, can it do this, and can do that, and with that, all these options. And we always say, yes, it's great, but not for genes, because it needs to focus just on that market segment where people have mild cognitive impairment or dementia, and we can only be in that narrative. And I think that narrative is very similar in China than it is in Holland or it is in the US or somewhere else.
Yeah, please feel free to reflect on it if you want. Because yes, it is important to talk about this, right? Like 50 million people with dementia worldwide, 82 million by 2030, and if we go on like that, 152 million by 2050. So it is, prevalent, very prevalent. So I would like to ask Henk Herman Knapp again to also give your opinion about, right, this industry, like how can we support them using technology, thinking about the theme of this conference, right, like e-health, digital health. It's more and more accepted already. So Henk, how can we work together with China, with Professor Gu, with Nico Schietekatте, Jill Mulder, and the product of Genus Home Care System? What do you think, Henk?
Yeah, so I think a very good starting point is, of course, trust. So if we can build up trust together, and I think we're doing that right now, that's already also a very good route to success and successfully working together. And in addition to that, I always also like to start small. So I really like the idea also, maybe we can just start with one project together and build that up. Maybe just first small, and then do iterations. And if it's just going to work out, we can further build on that. But what I know from international projects, and I do a lot of them, it's all about trust and building that trust together, which really helps further cooperation. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so this project has been started like quite literally because of the event. Because you are here today, giving your expertise. So yeah, also Nico, again, like what are the challenges right now regarding dementia in China? The amount of people having dementia or the adoption of technology, it's quite different than in the Netherlands, probably. So how's the situation with the adoption of technology regarding dementia, for example?
Yeah. Thank you very much for your question. Maybe our Chinese colleagues could even reply better than I can. But it's true that, of course, earlier today we had already various presentations talking about aging in China, and of course the number of people, and going to 300 million Chinese people who will be 60 years and older relatively soon, right? So 2030 is almost in, looks like in a couple of days, looks far away, but it's very close. So that you see in general that brain disease is increasing in China, for instance, also Parkinson, besides dementia. And there you see that there's a growing investment from different parts, the governmental parts, in research, entrepreneurs, in this particular field with longer term action plans to address this. And I see also an increasing openness for international cooperation, which I very much welcome and encourage also from from my side. So that I think is extremely positive. When I look at the what we call the tech savviness in China, it's quite amazing, honestly. There is a very strong inclination to adopt new technologies in China. If anything that's related to digital technologies anyway, you see a lot of early adopters in China. And to be very honest with you, I think that in the Netherlands we could learn a lot from what China has already done in terms of digital transitions in the healthcare sector.
Yes, yes. Okay, so what would be next steps then, Nico, talking about this long-term collaboration?
But I think that, of course, what like the other speakers said, and also what Herman referred to in a moment, I think that there are really three types of joint actions that we need to undertake. Firstly, to generate and boost the interest in the challenges that dementia poses to our societies. Secondly, to create a space for worldwide coalitions and formulate concrete actions on improvement of care and support. And thirdly, to promote investment in research in this area. I think that's why I agree with the other speakers that the initiative you've taken to bring us together with Chinese partners today and tomorrow in the coming days is an excellent initiative, exactly along these three joint action lines that I see as priorities and that I also see as feasible for the coming years.
Right. So Henk Herman and also Professor Gu, what do you think about those steps, those possible steps?
Yeah, it's absolutely practical for us to find some collaborative works. We can maybe start from some pilot tests. For my laboratory, we have some facilities for user tests, especially some early clinical tests or pilot tests. We can help them, help this, Hanker's company, or it's my pleasure to do some joint collaboration, joint this kind of research,
Yeah.
to serve the community. If I remember, it's not 50 million. It's overall we have 50 million patients in so far. But in China we have more than 10 million. Almost 20% of the overall. It's a very large number of patients in China. So we welcome. We are totally open-minded for all kind of solutions.
Yeah. And the good thing is, of course, that we already defined that also, I think, in these meetings, is that we already have a shared goal. And we have a shared challenge, we have shared opportunities. So that's already a very good base, I think. And maybe we can go to some JAIN living labs or in both countries. That would be really great.
Yeah.
Indeed, like the field labs and Genius Care is actually a good example of like a practical product, so to say, which really focuses on this target group. So Jill.
No, definitely. And I think what's interesting is that our solution is built for the elderly use group with signs of dementia. But what we offer is also a stream of data that can be used in all sorts of AI modeling systems and so on. So I think it would be very interesting to connect our data stream with data analysts and AI experts or machine learning experts, and really make the full use of the plethora of data that we provide. And I think this is where the strength is, right? It's always one needs data and analytics, and the other one needs to create that data. So I think what we do is provide something that creates data, but that people actually like because it actually connects family and friends. And the other side, we have some simple algorithms, but we can do a lot more. And I think this is where the collaboration really can make a lot of difference with the experts around the table here, where this data can be made to use much better than it even is today. And then it becomes something that is the de facto platform on how to help people in this stage, right? Before we're going to get to medicine and so on. We're going to have a long period where we need to use technology.
Right, and that's interesting for Professor Gu, because he focuses on the industry and on companies like you or like products. So I see some again some ground of collaboration right there. And Henk Herman, how do you cope with those international collaborations? Right, we talk about digital health, we talk about AI in multiple countries. You have to connect different kinds of regulations. What is your experience on that?
I have now, I think, some 10 to 15 years of experience doing international projects and also the very large ones. And of course, it is quite complicated. But what I think, it's of course, there are a lot of things you can do on project management, etc. But it's all about people and how you work together and how you appreciate the things that you are doing together. So it's more about people and implementation and how you do it. Then let's say all the management stuff. So it's really important that you get to know each other, that you know about each other's values, that you start speaking the same language. That next to the work that you also enjoy a dinner or whatever. It's really about that, and if you have that right, you can really work together. So of course there are a lot of things that we can do, and that's all written down on project management. But it's really about connecting people to work together.
That's a good point, I think. Nico, what would you think of that?
Yeah, I fully agree with Henk Herman. I think that also connects very well to the reality. I've been living here ever since I'm not only working but also living in China and very much enjoying it, and especially as Professor Gu said, that of course for the past 2 to 3 years it has been a little bit challenging to get the physical connections right, because of the pandemic. It was difficult to travel and to meet each other physically. There are a lot of things we can do digitally, like now, and a lot of things that I can do on behalf of, for instance, Jill or Henk Herman. We've been doing various things already with Henk Herman, for instance, for those who are not here. It doesn't, of course, substitute it, but we can be creative together on what we can do in these circumstances. And exactly what Professor Gu was saying, preparing for 2023, which is already quite close, right? It's not the door already. But to get prepared ourselves to have some exchanges in getting, in the end, these face-to-face meetings, and also have more social activities together, meeting up. But I would definitely encourage us all to continue these ways of communication as we are having now, because exactly this also contributes to this trust creation, to build that up for the moments that we will be able to together physically, be it in China or in the Netherlands or in any other country for that matter.
Yeah, and what is maybe also good to add to that, of course we are really experienced now in 3 years of COVID. So what we also did in international, I've run international projects only online, and that also worked out in the end, because there are many ways you can even do co-design online. We developed online virtual environments where we co-design with different people from different cultures. So there's a lot to do already. Also online. Yeah.
And Mr. Gu, could you reflect as well on this, like connecting people and online meetings? Maybe a next step is to plan more meetings.
Yeah, we have a postdoctor. She is just majoring technology acceptance. His research talk is about how people more appreciate our product or our system or interface. So especially those we call that AI product related to our daily use or our normal people. Then a big problem is how people gradually accept its intervention into our normal life. That's an issue. So because we may slightly change their lifestyle and their habit. So somehow this is a big problem. You have a good idea, but no people accept it. That's the problem. So especially maybe we have a different cultural background. We Chinese. You're Netherlands people. You're European. Then we have, and also maybe we also have a different regulation. So that's our should pay enough attention to this.
And as the executive director of Information and Interaction Design Committee in China, GO, and Industrial Design, do you work together with the Netherlands already?
No, so far we don't have any collaboration with. Not really. We have some academic research jointly with. I think we have a collaboration with. The university in Netherlands is a university. We have a professor. A few years ago, quite a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, we have a collaboration. It's not a big project. It's just a personal connection. We have a professor. We have a friend.
Yes. Okay, sounds good. So again, more meetings would be good. Like not is saying as well, the online meetings actually were good, and COVID took care of a lot of innovation, right? Like a lot of digital communication, and we saved travel time, travel costs, and also with this conference, it's a worldwide conference. Israel is involved, America, Canada, the Netherlands, and of course a lot of Chinese people are watching. So it actually works really good. And talking about like the next conference, for example, maybe we can focus on challenging people more, like a competition again. Like for JAIN, I can say that we have organized challenges. So those were competing companies with each other. And that's why Genius Care, Jill Miller, is here today because he was the winner of the World JAIN Challenge in last spring this year. So maybe we can focus again on that as well. Jill, would you apply again to join?
If I'm allowed to, obviously, I think one of the great things about these type of conferences is that it really triggers everybody's mind to get them out of the daily work that we do and think, how can we get to the next level? And that is really intriguing. Obviously, it allows startup or scale-up companies like us to have an international audience, which is fantastic. So I think those two together really accelerate innovation. And I really would like to pick up the ball for Mr. Gu and get a field lab trial going in China, because at the end of the day, we all know we need to get to the next stage. We'll talk about implementing technology, but it's not so easy, right? And there are many trials that haven't made it because the adoption rate, as just was said, just wasn't there, because people are very stuck in their ways, right? Habits die hard, particularly with people with dementia. Actually, the habits even get stronger because new things are harder to come by. So I think this is an opportune time to really hone down it. What does it take to get technology into the homes of the elderly people? We make products, we can adapt, we are flexible, but it all starts with something like this. We'll say, okay, let's hone down. What can we do? what are the results that we're after, what are we going to measure, and then once it's done, we go to the audience that actually can implement it and say, okay, well, this is tested, it's proven. Now, how can we roll it out, right? Because it will require investment, it will require people, it will require a vision, a network in a country. Something that we can't organize, obviously, from Holland to roll something out in China. We have Chinese partners that understand the market intimately to make that happen. So, and then at the end of the day, we are a essential but a small part in the big radar of getting that technology to the end user. So we would like to play our role, but we are only also in this whole role only a part of the big picture, and we need those partners to make that.
Right. So we need those partners. Yeah, and let's think of something else, like values that are important to you personally. Like when you are being diagnosed with Alzheimer's, what values are important? Can I ask openly?
Sorry, I recall the professor name is Professor Lodberg. He working for TU Eindhoven.
Rotterberg, yeah, Rotterberg. Yeah, I know it.
TU Eindhoven.
Matthias.
I think he's now maybe retired.
He's
He's quite famous professor, Lodberg, Professor Lodberg. He loved China, stay in China. So we have a good collaboration 5 years ago.
Maybe I should invite him as well, like for the next. So we have Jill again and Nico and Nop. What would you do? What values are important to you? For instance, when being diagnosed in this like that, if it would happen, you know? Can I ask you? Hank?
Yeah, for me, I would really like to live the life as if I didn't have it. So in my own house, in my own neighborhood, with my loved ones around me, if possible, of course. And I really would not like to burden my family or parents too much. So yeah, I also think that technology, maybe my embodied AI robots, that he or she can wash me and get me out of bed, feed me if needed, as such that I can enjoy my family outside of, let's say, a care home environment. So I really want to live in dignity, want to be part of society, and I think AI and technology can help that. Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of developments are there already on AI. Nico, can I ask you maybe about your values?
Yes, thank you very much, Thomas. I quite like the reply of Henk Herman. Indeed, as we are among friends, we can get a little bit personal indeed. Talking about my own experience, well, I had last summer my own personal experience. In fact, my father passed away with dementia, so that was a very emotional experience. So of course, I had to fly from China to the Netherlands. And for me, this was really also a kind of a wake-up call that the elderly person does not exist, right? There is not a one-size-fits-all. And you realize that when you get really the own experience in one of the closest relationships that you can have, a son with his father. And I also realized that in fact, elderly change over time. Right? My father was not like his father, and who was not like his father, right? And so the environment should change as well. The family needs to be involved in this process. The healthcare providers need to be involved in that process as well. So for me, it was important also in my own experience of last summer to make the most of the abilities of the people with dementia, in this case my own father, instead of focusing merely on the disabilities of my father in this case. So what I've been focusing on, and I would like that would happen to me as well when I will get to that stage, to have the support and the care that meets my own preference preferences and the preferences of my family and the preferences of my caregivers should I get to that stage. And to enable me, just what I think Herman was referring to as well, enabling me to participate in society for as long as possible. And there technology can really make a difference.
Yeah, okay, so we are looking forward to those possibilities, and they are there already. And thank you for sharing like a personal story as well. Yeah, because it differs, right, from person to person regarding the values and the genes and the environment and what the environment brings out of people, right? So it's like the phenotype and the genotype. It's the phenotype what determines the behavior. It's what you see. It's the sickness or dementia that comes out. So we're talking about a supportive environment, a challenging environment, which is sometimes good because challenging environments stimulate the brain, and it's either wear or tear. And Professor Slaap will tell more about that tomorrow. But focusing on cultures like China and the Netherlands, right? Maybe the Netherlands for now, Jill. What's your experience in the Netherlands if you look at the environment and is dementia being promoted, so to say, or is it being prevented, if you know what I mean?
Well, what I see is that there's a lot more attention to dementia and a lot more awareness that this is a disease that is getting more prevalent in society. And I think our Ministry of Long-Term Health, Connie Helder, also makes very strong point about this. And in the new care systems that we're implementing, there's really defined attention to people with dementia and how we can manage this, right? So it's all about people staying longer at home, using technology to support people staying longer at home. So I think the subject is no longer something that we swipe under the carpet and okay, well, it just happens and that's the way it is. We put them away in care homes and that's it. I think we are all more and more aware that we need to address this differently, and this is what I like about Herman as well. What really strikes me is the dignity part. I think that is essential. That we sometimes we say good people with dementia, but as Nico said, there's not good people. There is your father, right, or your mother that has the dementia, and it doesn't get more personal than that. And I think we should never forget that whatever we do, we're doing this for the people that are fragile, that have worrying kids that also have their own lives, and what can we do to enhance the life of the elderly, but also from everybody around, because the burden on family is massive when it comes to being the social caretaker. And in a world, and this also plays in China, where we have double aging, right? So we get more people that are older, and there's less people that can take care of them, professional caretakers. The social caretakers are going to be the essential part in taking care of, well, us, right? So my kids will most likely have to spend more time in taking care of me when I'm old than currently is set in our systems. And I think we should provide the tools for them to make it easier and better and not waste time on non-essential stuff. But as Nico says, spend time on the essential stuff, as in connecting with people, focusing on what is possible, and having tools and technologies to provide for the discipline.
Yeah, and how is that the case in China, Go and Nico? Is there a lot of how do you say, like good news and good tutorials and training and information about preventing dementia? And there's the Abort project, and like Jill is saying about Minister Connie Helder and the Dutch dementia strategy. How is that in China? Go and yes, speak openly, please. Go.
Yeah, in China, somehow dementia is invisible in our public view site. They so far, but still we have a culture. We respect the elderly people. In China, we as a as a younger people, we need to that's our is kind of I think it's in our culture. You even our elderly, father or mother passed away. Even we still should stay at home for a certain period of time. It's kind of very restricted. We call that kind of. It's not a law, but it's our tradition. So that's especially in this age, we have only one child, one family. We have a long-term policy in our regeneration. We have one child, one family policy. So that's a very big challenge for our next few decades, because the young people must face several elderly, maybe at least four elderly people for each family. So that's a very it's a quite large challenge for us. So if we can provide some device or facilities, especially some equipment in dementia family, maybe the people serving the elderly people, the user is not dementia itself, themselves. It's people serve them. So if we have enough strong and intelligent equipment, then I think it will improve our living standard in China, because for elderly people, like a baby, I always think they only have two emotions, crying or happy, smiling. They may not feel strong about uncomfortable or something other emotion. It's kind of just their cognition is degraded to a standard of a baby. So we just treat them as a baby. But we still need some device or equipment for a young mother or father. So that's our I think it's my opinion. We need to pay more attention to and efficiency or I can think that's a value increasing point in our society.
Yeah, so it's important to take care of the elderly and not just put them in nursing homes. That's what you hear sometimes as well. That's for the West. I can tell that sometimes it works like that, right? And people want to live at home longer. And good, you're saying that we should focus on this, right? Like it's a social concept that you are talking about. It's maybe even a taboo, right? And it's good to talk about that, like taking care of the elderly, taking care of next generations. That's something totally different, but still it interconnects, of course, because you're talking about the degradations of generations, and one generation right now has to take care of a lot of old people, for example. Because you're saying, that you're only allowed to have one child, they have to take care of all those older people. Yeah. So talking about those social concept, Nico, can I ask you maybe as well, like how do you cope with that in China and about the abort project, for example, because we did not talk about that yet. Could you maybe reflect on that?
Yeah. Well, of course, first of all, I fully recognize what Professor Wu was saying about the cultural aspect, and I think we exchanged it earlier as well, how important it is to in international exchanges and in trying to implement solutions, be it from the Netherlands or elsewhere in China or vice versa. So that's an extremely important topic. And maybe if you allow me, Thomas, really quickly getting back to Jill. As he was referring to Connie Helder, who's of course my minister, he made a very good point because in the latest reform that Connie Helder announced is what is very central to this reform is that the elderly want to stay in control of their own life, first of all. And also, and there's, I think, where we connect very well also with the Chinese reality, with the Chinese culture, is that the elderly want to remain meaningful to society. That is what I see here as well. And mind you, when Connie Helder was still CEO of an elderly care organization before she became a minister, she came here, by the way, together with Paramount in a visit with the former Minister of Health, Welfare and Sports to China. And what she saw there in how in daycare organizations, for instance, for the elderly here in China, this is what in fact was adopted in the Netherlands. And I was at the opening on the 25th of May of this year, so very recent. Where in one of the elderly care organizations called Tante Louise, a daycare organization, a daycare center, was opened officially in my presence and in the presence of Minister Connie Helder, inspired by what she had seen in her former position as CEO, what she has seen in China, in Beijing and in Suzhou. So I think that's very important as well. You see how even if there are cultural differences, you can get inspiration from these cultures and implement it in your own reality, which is of course very important indeed. So I think that when elderly, and I think probably elderly want to stay in control everywhere as long as they can possible, right, and be meaningful to society. And that's why we in the Netherlands, with our latest reform of Minister Helder, are focusing, first of all, on self-management of the elderly where possible, and also on home care where possible, and digital care where possible, and only institutional care when really the other options are not feasible for different reasons. And I think indeed in home care, you will probably see an increase of different home care needs in China as well. And of course, in the home care, not only to the benefits of the elderly person, him or herself, but also to the benefits of the children, right? The adults who have to go to work, make a living, the grandchildren, the social environment, the family at large, the friends, the social environment. It's very important to have these technologies implemented in the local reality, the local culture.
Yes, very elaborative. So thank you for reflecting like that as well. Jill, can I ask for your opinion as well about this?
Yeah, well, I think as Nico pointed out very well, there's no magic thing that works everywhere in the world. So I think there are great ideas, there are great concepts, and then we must ensure that they are adapted to the local environment and hopefully to the local person, right? So whatever we build isn't going to work for every person in Holland either, right? So there's so many different requirements, needs, and we must make a menu and say, okay, well, how far can we adapt the product to the personal needs? And that starts off with a very blank, okay, well, this is what we offer, to something that really adapts and changes over time to personal needs. And I think this is where AI can play a big role, where we really measure what people enjoy, like, right? And there are great, I call it AI engines like whatever, TikTok or or other online social media things that measure really well how people react and what they react to. We should apply this also to people with dementia and keep learning. Right? Okay, so they're changing, so now must make things less how do you call it fancy, just more straight to the point. But they really enjoy music, for instance, right? So we've learned now that they like classical music, whatever, from the whatever Bach or Beethoven, or they're born in 1950 and add 20 years to that, 20 years. Let's play ABBA, right? So because we know this is in their youth section. So and we can then easily learn by using algorithms to adapt the solution to the person. And I think if we end up this session saying, okay, there's a worldwide problem, but let's find something that addresses that person, that father, that mother, and those children and caretakers. I think then we have something that really is special.
Yes, certainly. Yeah. I would like to add one more thing. It was also triggered by you, Jill, and also by Nico. It's also, of course, a lot about communication. So how are we going to communicate together to build up this cooperation? And also in relation to the thing that Nico was saying, whenever we went to China together with Connie Helder, what I really liked is also the way you build a care home. The way they communicated that was in a very small booklet in Chinese. We cannot read Chinese, but what was done is that every page there was an image that said, okay, this is how you should do it, like a cartoon. Then there was an image with a cross through it. Don't do it like this. So where do you place a window? Where do you place a toilet, etc.? So we could actually read it because it was written in drawings. And that is also something I think for further cooperation. So to find ways to communicate.
Right. One of the last points then, I think. Because Go and Schiedekata, I'd also like to give you the final words of today's conference.
Okay. I wish we could, just making some progress in also in the near future, not so long time, Yeah, we wish we could just start up to do something, to find some maybe on internet we can start some discussions, and then if the situation I think gradually more relaxed, more convenient for our future. Next year, I think things will be changed slightly. So we can visit to each other to see real people in Netherlands or in our Shanghai. Shanghai almost like a country, European country.
Yes.
We have more than 20, maybe 30 million people. 30 million people.
That's
larger than Netherlands, maybe larger than Netherlands.
Yes.
So it's a big city. So we can we can make a pilot test. Make some prototype.
Okay.
Yeah.
With Jill Mulder, and we see Jill tomorrow again. So thank you. And Nico, I would like to give you the final word.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Well, I hope to see Professor Gu maybe next week when I'm in Shanghai. Maybe we could do some nice social gathering, go for dinner or
okay. That would be my great honor.
It would be great. It would really be great. Talk a little bit further about the outcomings of this meeting and other things we would like to exchange on strengthening our cooperation and go one step deeper or one step higher maybe. But I think that in the end, indeed, when talking about shared challenges and common solutions, that's really what we're talking about, right? And I think what we also share is what we really want is to have high quality care and cure accessible and affordable to everybody. Technology plays an increasingly role in this part, and for that, internationalization will only increase this process in maintaining a high quality care, affordable and accessible to all.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you very much. And I think Connie Helder also made a special video about this, which we will show later. So looking forward to that. Of course, because we talk about the self-reliance of people and staying at home longer, so they are more independent. So thank you for these experts to share your experience and your knowledge about this team. Thank you to all scientists of today for speaking and sharing your information and for participating and contributing to this mission. And today we will close, and tomorrow we will go on again, fighting actually for the lives of people with dementia and for the elderly. So thank you very much and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.